Well, here we are on the beautiful shores of beautiful Echo Lake in a little bit of shade with a beautiful sunny day all around us. I'm Paul Truscott, and this is my wife Wendy Truscott, née Lawson, and the two roads coming into this property have our names on them, which is pretty exciting actually.
My parents would be thrilled.
Well, I first met Wendy very close to this property actually at the Baysville Dam. Back in '53 when I was in high school, a buddy of mine had a cottage just below the dam by the name of Bob Barlow. We did a lot of wonderful hunting and fishing in this area, and lo and behold,
A few years later,
Wendy walked in with her family, and we've been together now for 59 plus 6 years. It's about 65 years of knowing each other. We've been married 59 years. And then we were living down in the city, working down in the city, and had this place up here and decided that two places was too much to look after. And I actually said to Wendy, well, where do you want to live? Make your choice. And of course she picked this spot, and it's been heaven ever since.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard decision which place to give up because there's so much history here. My parents bought the property originally from one of the farm families on the lake in 1953, and we kind of had our own pioneer experience here, blazing a trail through the bush and building the first cottage. Eventually my parents found people wanted to rent cottages and built 5 more to rent, so they had a little bit summer business here. And when Paul retired, we built a winterized cottage, and we'd come up in the winter for a few days every month, and he'd say to me, do you think you could ever live here? And I'd say, oh gosh, it's so quiet. If I ever moved up here, I'd have to find a part-time job. And I now call that the biggest joke ever, because the first thing I did was join the Friends of the Library, and that was a wonderful introduction to Baysville. I worked on their galas and different things for about 8 years, and Paul was the auctioneer and MC many of those years. I was in the book club at the library, and then more recently joined the painting group, so I paint with Shirley Pretty regularly at the library. Friends of ours introduced us to Probus in Bracebridge. We joined Bethune United Church and really found a good church family there. And in the process of all these activities, especially, I joined the writers group at the library. Paul and I both did, to write memoirs. But eventually mine turned into fiction, and I've since written 2 novels set in this area in pioneer days, and so that was a whole new thing for me to turn to writing, and especially to turn out 2 novels. But my heart is here, and I guess that's why the setting was here. So we've been very busy ever since we moved up here full-time, which was 2007.
Right, so that's 14 years now, and I've kept myself busy looking after the property. Gardening is a hobby of mine, which I really enjoy. And I golf with a great men's group over at Keary Glen, west of Bracebridge, once a week. It's a very organized, wonderful group to golf with. And as Wendy says, I've been busy with the church and was part of the writers group initially. And so we've been anything but bored. It's a great place to retire, just spectacular,
Our
really.
kids love the place, our grandchildren. I can remember my grandparents coming up to visit, and it's a thrill to have our grandchildren here. So yeah, the place is very dear to our heart, and Baysville is just a fantastic community. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. If you drive down the street at 5 o'clock on a winter's evening and there isn't a soul in sight, you'd think it was dead, but you have no idea all the exciting things that are going on behind the scenes. It's wonderful. The first winter we were here full time, I think it was '07, it might have been '08 the year later, there was a Christmas program planned at St. Ambrose Anglican Church, organized by the Friends of the Library, and different people were doing readings, and Paul was going to play the organ for carol singing. But there was a major blizzard, and he got stuck in Toronto and couldn't make it through. Roads were closed, and I shoveled off the car at least 5 times that day. There was that much snow, and I kept thinking any minute they're going to cancel this event at St. Ambrose, but they never did. So I carried on. I drove into Baysville, and the church was packed. So that's when I learned that in Baysville nothing is ever canceled because of bad weather. People come out because they just have such a great sense of community. So that was a really interesting introduction to winter here. When my parents bought this property from Mr. and Mrs. Tyrrell, the farmers on the lake, I say Echo Lake is divided into 3 parts, and there were only cottagers on the first part. So when we built our cottage on the middle part, there was no one in sight, and there was no one in Winders Bay. It was very quiet and very peaceful, and despite the growth of cottagers on the lake, I still find it extremely peaceful.
And as to Baysville, Baysville in my mind really hasn't changed a whole heck of a lot since I first came up here in '53, and
Prettier.
it certainly is a great, well-kept secret for Muskoka.
One of our neighbors says he doesn't like to tell anybody about Baysville. He wants to keep it a well-kept secret because it's just perfect as it is.
Hi, my name's Hugh, and we're talking about Muskoka, specifically Baysville area. I've been here since I built this place in the fall of '71, spring of '72, and been here ever since. Mostly initially cottaging, and then the last 15 years full-time. A little bit before that, I commuted for maybe 5 years, something close to that, 3 days a week to the city, and then decided that was enough and lived here permanently. Have enjoyed it because of the ambience of the area, like the winters, believe it or not, and of course loved the summers. Came here because the area, Lake of Bays, even though they don't have garbage pickup and that, it's got so many pluses going for it. Local restaurants, local stores, the road, our particular road has been kept well in the winter, sanded, etc., so it has not been a problem. As most seniors find that move here, initially I looked around, tried to find a doctor. After about 3 years, I just gave up and kept the doctors that I had in the city, and it's not that bad going down once or twice a year for whatever you might need. It's a friendly community, and I've joined years ago the curling club. And more recently, I've got involved with the bocce group and so on. And more, just not long ago, I got involved with one of the card groups that in the area. Always used for years the local library, which is convenient. And I guess over the time I've been here, of course, there's been a number of eating establishments of various sizes and quality, etc. But there's basically always been a restaurant that was local that you could go to when you wished. Going back to the original Lincoln Lodge that was quite popular when I first came up here, and then over the years, Birch Haven, Maggie's, till now we've got the cast iron, quite popular, Fork in the Road, the Humble Pie Bakery. So there's the food situation in Baysville is I think quite good. And I guess really, I really have nothing totally bad to say about Muskoka. I've loved the time here. Things are between Bracebridge, Huntsville, there's not anything that I can think of that you can't buy. It's been a pleasure living here.
Hi, I'm Margaret Morrison, and I've lived in Muskoka for almost 25 years and enjoyed every single moment of it. I met my husband David in 1963, and the night I met him, he was at Western University. He told me that his dream was to retire early and to retire in Muskoka. Because I just met him, it didn't seem so significant to me. But given that neither one of us ever dated anybody else after that first meeting, I learned more and more and more how determined he was that this is where we would live after retirement. David retired early, again with Muskoka on his mind. I kept working for several years and would commute, but not David, boy. The minute he put in his last day of work, he was Muskoka bound. We bought a cottage. He enlarged it with the help of good friends and made it into a home on Dickey Lake that would accommodate all 15 of our family. David's dreams for retirement eventually became mine too. We lived there on Dickey Lake till just about 3 years ago. The reason that we left Dickey Lake, it was quite a large property, and I actually had 25 gardens on the property, was that David got to the point where he felt he couldn't manage the property. So with the help of our good friends, the Burtons, here in town, we found this property. David and I together were pretty blessed to live here for 3 years. David has recently died, and his foresight on 2 issues: one, to retire in Muskoka, and secondly, to leave me with a smaller, more manageable property. Both have been a gift to me. Living here in the village is quite incredible. I can walk to the library, the curling club, the post office, the general store. My office looks out onto Yolanda Bay, and it is incredible the amount of wildlife that we get to see every day. Since I've retired finally, I've become very involved with the Anglican Church here in Muskoka. The church community here in Baysville is very close. We work cooperatively amongst the churches. My next door neighbors, Mel and Sean, both work, but they are so inordinately helpful to me. They have become great friends. It has made me feel, particularly since David's death, like I have family close by.